Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone had their coffees, tea. Can we get going, please? I would like to introduce our first speakers of the day. It's my pleasure to introduce the first speakers of the day. It looks like we are going to hear some really interesting stories about the collaboration between BC Transit, their unions, WorkSafeBC to improve return to work outcomes, implementation of work disability prevention best practices. And I would like to welcome Brian Anderson, Vice President Operations and Chief Operating Officer, BC Transit.
Thank you.
Hello. Ben Williams, President of Unifor Local 333BC. Hello. And Ian Monroe, former Vice President of Claims and Vice President of Employer and Worker Services, WorkSafeBC. Here we go. So, welcome.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me all right? Well, good morning and welcome, and also welcome and good morning to those of us who are connected remotely with this conference. I understand that we have a dozen or so people connected across the country and participating, so welcome to you as well. Just so we get a bit of a feel and a sense of our audience, I wondered if I could ask a couple of questions. Hands up. How many of you are not from Canada? Fair number. Welcome to Canada. And how many of you are not from British Columbia? Okay, so a fair number again. And I guess that leads to the last question. How many of you are from British Columbia? Welcome to everybody. And second question for you, just to give us again a bit of a feel, in terms of your background and who you represent, so how many of you would put yourself in the arena of a researcher or an academic? Good number of people in that category. How many representing employers? Good, thank you. And how many representing labor? Good. And lastly, I think medical providers. How many representing medical providers? So we've got a very good cross-section, so that's great. It's my pleasure to introduce an initiative with BC Transit, and before I do that, I've got a couple of slides. I'm going to be fairly brief because this presentation is about BC Transit and their journey to workplace disability prevention. First two slides are a bit of an infomercial for WorkSafeBC, I hope. Mark to the rescue. Oh. Okay. Thank you. So Mark classified himself, when I asked those earlier questions, as a researcher, so we now know that he's also a technical wizard. Thanks. So these two slides, as I mentioned, are kind of a slight infomercial for WorkSafeBC and the work we do. And for those of you not from Canada, we have a scheme in Canada. Each provincial jurisdiction has a workers' compensation and prevention function. We're known in British Columbia as WorkSafeBC. Until about 5 years ago, we had three lines of business. We had prevention, which is job one for organizations like ourselves. It's our main goal to prevent injury and harm for workers in our jurisdiction in the province of British Columbia. Our second line of business is claims. So when there has been, unfortunately, a workplace accident or injury, our claims teams around the province kick in and provide the support to help the injured worker return to work. And the third line of business is what we refer to as insurance. We receive no provincial funding. We collect our revenues to operate the system from the employers of British Columbia. So those were our three lines of business until about 5 years ago, when we introduced a fourth line of business, and we refer to it as consulting services. So we have a number of people who go out and work with work sites, with industry, with labor, to help them develop health and safety management systems and return to work programs. And we like to say, and when we do say this, we're always corrected by the employer, we like to say these are free services. The consulting services that we provide, we do not charge for, but of course, the employers pay for these services through the premiums they pay WorkSafeBC. So those consultants go around the province and work with many, many companies and many, many work sites. And I've just put a few logos up to give you an example of some. We have done much work with most every sector in the province of British Columbia, primarily, again, focusing on health and safety to reduce injury rate, and secondarily, to help develop return to work programs. So what is work disability prevention? As WorkSafeBC defines it, and Brian will be speaking more about this in a few moments from the perspective of BC Transit, we see workplace disability prevention as part of an overall health and safety system. So we encourage, of course, all companies to have a robust health and safety management system, and part of that is a return to work program. Could be called previously disability management. We now refer to it more and more as workplace disability prevention. And heavy emphasis on stay at work, and you're going to hear about that from the presenters, and heavy emphasis on remaining in work and not re-injury. On the bottom, you'll see some of the highlights of the differences between a disability management program and a workplace disability prevention program. And again, the two speakers following me will speak more to that, but it's very proactive, and it's not nearly as medically based as it was previously in a disability management program. I wanted to emphasize that we take the research that you develop and provide to practitioners like ourselves and use it and make sure that we're out there taking advantage of the research as we're developing the programs that I've just mentioned. So we're continuously surfing and learning and talking to people like Mark and other researchers to make sure that we're abreast of the research that you are conducting. This is just a short list of some of the research that we looked at as we were developing the workplace disability management programs. And one of our staff will be at our booth after this presentation if you'd like to know more about the research and how we go about garnering that research and converting it to practice and helping employers make that conversion from research to practice. One of the key elements that we developed as part of this program was an audit tool. And you'll see the various phases that we went through. So you might ask, well, what's the difference between this audit tool in the workplace disability prevention arena versus the audit tools, and there are many of them, on return to work programs and disability management programs. And there has and is quite a significant difference between the audit tools of today and the audit tools that were used previously in the disability management era. Again, the presenters following me will talk a little bit more about that, but typically in the past, the audit would go in and say, can you show me your return to work manual? And they'd take a look at it, talk to a couple of people, the return to work coordinators, and say, yeah, looks good, check, done. This audit is very robust. We do audits on claim files. We look at many, many claim files. We talk to supervisors, we talk to workers, we talk to managers, we talk to the return to work coordinators. It's very robust and it's very detailed and very thorough. And flowing from that audit, we provide the employer and the union with a scorecard. And again, Brian will speak more about that, but it is quite different than the audit tools of the previous era. So BC Transit. As you saw from that list of logos, we look for candidate employers and work sites to work with us to develop those health and safety management systems and return to work programs. And BC Transit, when we approached them and they approached us, it was almost simultaneously. We said, great match, let's work together and develop the program as we go forward. So speaking on behalf of BC Transit, as Isabella mentioned, is Brian Anderson, and speaking on behalf of Unifor, one of the unions of BC Transit is Ben Williams. What I can say about Brian is he was the executive sponsor, which we absolutely need when we're going into one of these engagements. This is not easy work. it takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment. So Brian, our thanks to you as the executive sponsor. And Ben played the role, a very, very critical and key role as the leader of the workforce and being the president of their union, showing the leadership to make the workforce understand the benefits and the reason why this was in fact a good program. So Ben, your leadership was extremely important, and we thank you for that very much. So with that intro, Brian, I think you're first up.
Well, thank you, Ian. It's nice not to go first and have the tech issues figured out before. Perfect. And I've got my phone up here. It's we can figure out how to do a WT implementation, but I can't figure out how to keep the screen on for the timer. So I have to touch it every once in a while to make sure we're staying in time. Before I get going with our journey, though, about WDP, oh, that's loud. Is that loud for everyone? There we go. Better? I do want to tell you a little bit about BC Transit because we are a bit unique, and I cannot adjust this myself. Tech issues. Another tech issue. You want me to use that one instead? How's that? Check, check, check. Check, check. Okay, we'll go with that. Better? Okay. BC Transit's a bit unique. We provide all the transit services across the province outside of Lower Mainland. So unlike the bellman at my hotel last night, I'm not able to address the concerns about the UBC line, but anything else outside of Lower Mainland, certainly interested in hearing about. What's unique about BC Transit, though, is when WorkSafe engages with us, they're actually engaging with us and potentially 30 more operating partners around the province. And some of their previous consulting engagements did identify some of our bigger operating partners. You know, in terms of scope and scale, we carry about 51 million passengers, but I think the real issue for workplace disability prevention is about our employees. And we have you know, a little over 500 transit operators, 90 mechanics and support staff. We have office staff who provide a lot of the shared services to support those transit agencies around the province. And you know, that's about 900 in total. And this program was about that. Our average age, definitely over 50. We have periods of long sitting, if you can imagine transit operators with a 7 or an 8 hour shift. A lot of periods of sitting leads to some medical concerns. Mechanics, a lot of physical exertion, dealing with big heavy wrenches, big heavy parts, a lot of stress there. Going into this program, Ben and I would agree we had some stress relationships with the unions, just in terms of discipline and following up on case studies. But the real challenge we faced was the interactions between the supervisors and the employees. Transit operators start their days on road, and their days on road. There's not really an office for them to come into. There's a very small group of employees that spend a lot of time in the office, but for the majority, they're out on the road. They never see a supervisor. They could go 6 months without seeing a supervisor. In fact, they may not even know who their supervisor is if they rotated around from one transit center to another. We didn't have email for our transit operators. There wasn't a way to communicate them with them on a timely basis. So these people are truly mobile and truly disconnected. So in the event of an injury, there just really wasn't that opportunity for a rich dialogue between the employee and the supervisor. I'm trying to get far away from that microphone in case it's causing this reverb. But for all the researchers out there, we didn't do this based on research, sorry. We did this because we had a problem. And our problem was we had a lot of employees who were losing a lot of time, and a lot of that time was being lost due to non-occupational injuries. So they were getting injured. I mean, think about it. We got weekend warriors out there trying to blow off some steam from their job. That's a little better. I promise after this, I'll just use the stand-up mic if this doesn't fix it. We were losing over 200,000 hours of time to injuries and illness. And what was happening is, you know what transit's like, the wheels on the bus need to go round and round. So if we didn't have the ability, are we ditching this?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll ditch that. We'll go back to here. I'll be constrained to podium. How's that? That sounds better already. See, sometimes you just have to pull the plug and say it's not working. Okay, I'm less comfortable standing right here, constrained in here, but I'll work it. So the wheels on the bus go round and round. We need someone in that seat driving. And with 200,000 hours lost, we were putting an undue burden on the employees that were remaining at work, who had to pick up the slack and do the work, as well as we were incurring a lot of overtime, which then just puts even further stress on those individuals who are remaining at work, heightening the chance and the likelihood of an injury to occur, and just further exacerbating the problem. So this wasn't about, let's try to implement research best practices. This was about dealing with an employee issue we had in the workforce at the time. So basically what it came down to is, what can we as an employer do to reduce the time lost? And fundamentally a simple question, but we needed to start with, why are they losing so much time? So we started to break down, what happens when you're injured. And we had a very traditional model at BC Transit. You got injured, you went to the doctor. The doctor determined, whether you needed to go see more specialists or whether you needed to go home and rest. The doctor generally cleared you and said that you're okay to go back to work and start doing some, modified or light duties. And then generally the doctor would say you're okay to go back to your full job. Nothing wrong with the traditional model, except for the fact that you spend so much time waiting. And I think Ben will give a bit more of a perspective on that phenomenon. But not only did you spend a lot of time waiting, but there's a lot of barriers to getting the treatment done. From an employee point of view, just being able to get to the appointment, where the physio or where the doctors were located, also played into it. The ability to pay for some of these upfront costs, or use your financial benefits or worker benefits to cover it, hoping that you'll get reimbursed through a claim. Some just lack the initiative. Yeah, I know I need to go get some treatment, or I know I need to go see my doctor, but I'll get around to it next week. In the meantime, I'll put my leg up and I'll rest and, catch up on Maury Povich. There's also family needs, right? I mean, if you're the caregiver and you're used to working shift patterns or working nights, all of a sudden, how are you going to make the time to go see a doctor or a physio who's not available late at night in your location? So generally they lead to complications, and the complications lead to more time off, and the more time off leads to less likelihood of getting the employer back at work. You guys all know this. In fact, you probably created this. The odds of an employee returning to work. Well, we knew what the odds were, right? We knew that if they were going to be off for 3 months or 6 months, we were probably not going to see them back for a long time, if ever. When we were doing this program, we had 28 employees off for more than a year. And, we knew those employees weren't going to come back unless we did something different, unless we changed the way that we addressed recovering from injuries. So we sat down as an executive team, and, we sort of started thinking, what have we done well? As Ian mentioned, we had a very good occupational health and safety management system. We had a return to work component that was good. It certainly met the standards, but it was more based on the risk that if you didn't accept the accommodated duties or the modified duties, there would be some potential financial penalty to you in your claim. And for those who are not from BC or from the WorkSafe model, that probably is a foreign concept. But basically, if you're offered accommodated duties and they're reasonable and appropriate, then they could be reduced from your claim. And so some employees, a lot of employees were participating, but it wasn't because they really felt like they wanted to or that it was a good thing to do. It was more penalty-based almost, I'd say. We wanted to look at how do we make that so it's employee focused, so that it is sustainable, that it's something that employees really want to be part of, because they want to remain at the workplace. They want to remain with their team. And our focus then was on how do we improve what we've already got? How do we take our occupational health and safety management system and expand it? How do we take our return to work program and enhance it? And then how do we bundle that together and make a program that we can sell to all the employees, all the supervisors, all the managers, and the union that we deal with? So, because we're not researchers and because we don't keep abreast of all the data, we engaged the consulting services of WorkSafeBC. They came in, and as Ian mentioned, there was an exhaustive assessment that was completed. It wasn't just coming in and talking to a few people. This was 75 interviews. They went through all of our program documentation and policies. It took a long time and a lot of effort, but at the end of the day, we were able to get a comprehensive assessment of where we stood and how far we needed to transition to become truly a certified WDP employer, WorkSafe Disability Prevention employer. In terms of the findings, there was a little scorecard, but it identified that we had certainly strong commitment and support from the executive team, but really where we were lacking was standard policies and procedures. And our accommodations for those individuals who are coming back on graduated return to work, I'm not going to say that they were all ensuring that Grand and Toy sent 500 paper clips in every box, but it wasn't far off. They certainly were not centered around the employee's base job, and they weren't motivational. And so we knew that we had some work to do there. So after a bit of time and effort and thought and some processes, we decided this was time for the dawn of the next evolution of our occupational health and safety system. And we later named it Stay On Board. And we thought the concept of a new dawn really resonated with us, because this is changing the culture. This is changing our mantra from returning to work to enabling our employees to receive regular wages while recovering at work. Huge win. Speeding recovery and reducing the lost time, huge win for us. Reducing the likelihood of recurring injury or those exacerbating conditions that you get into with that spiral of, I think it's also known as the ripple effect, right, of being off work, this anxiety, depression. And so we had a vision. We needed a lot of work now to implement the vision. And in order to implement that vision, we knew we couldn't do it alone. We needed to engage our union leadership. We needed to engage all of our supervisory group. We needed to engage some subject matter experts. We needed to engage our healthcare providers. We needed to ensure that everyone understood what we were doing and why we were doing it so that we could get there. And I'll get to that in a little bit later. There's a for the researchers, there's a very methodical process to get there. All the building blocks have been identified, and we looked at this and we said, okay, check mark on the first one, senior leadership commitment. We're there. We don't have any of the others. So where do you start? We started on the top left. Ben and I took it upon ourselves to develop a policy statement that was going to guide the overall development of the program. And that policy statement, it was hammered out over a weekend, but we refined it over the course of the program engagement, and it really truly still holds as under those three overarching objectives. It's worker focused, recovery at work, timely, reduce the risk of reoccurrence. And then we basically just kept working to knock off the rest of the boxes. When I talk about counting paper clips, modified duties or accommodations at work really are at the center of engaging employees and wanting employees to participate and be part of recovery at work efforts. So, they talk about, they need to be safe and suitable, meaningful and productive. How do you do that when you're a transit operator and your job is to sit behind the wheel of a bus and drive the bus for 8 hours a day? What are those accommodations that are meaningful to that individual if they have a sore back? What if they have a sore shoulder? They're not able to do those activities. So we needed to figure out the core before we could move forward. So we needed to figure out what are those accommodated duties that are safe but meaningful, right? Meaningful for the employee. So we did a lot of focus groups. We had union representation. We had employees from each of the departments put forward some ideas, put forward some suggestions. Some of them were in cross unions, which, you know, required a bit of discussion and consultation. Some of them were in your own job area. Ultimately, though, you can't see this on purpose, we did come up with job jars, as we call them, right, which are immediate and longer term modified duties for each position and for each type of injury that we're likely to see. So each of those we then got to put into a little supervisory toolkit, a handbook for supervisors, so that if in the event that you do have an employee that has a sore back or has injured their back and they are an operator, you would turn to the operator back injuries page, and it gives you some ideas in terms of immediate modified duties that can be done while waiting to get them into their first treatment, as well as some longer term modified duties in the event that this situation needs to persist for a longer time. Very, very handy and very important. Not only do we have to ensure we have the right accommodations, we really have to deal with this WIIFM. What's in it for me? Because if they don't perceive there to be something in it for them, then you're not going to get their support. So from an employee point of view, clearly they get to maintain their earning capacity, they get to remain as part of the team, they get to remain at work, they get to enjoy the lifestyle that they had before that. For transit operators especially, you know, work is the life. So if you take them out of that social engagement, social interaction, the customer interactions, their friends around the table during breaks, that's pretty debilitating. From our perspective, we certainly get higher productivity. It starts to address that time loss. It gives us more capacity to serve more people. From the union's perspective, Ben will talk about it a little bit more, but it really provides great values to their members. It gives you something to, you know, access to earlier treatment, recovery at work. After a couple days, it's not really all about watching the reruns on Netflix. It's about getting back to your life. And this program provided that for the union. And from WorkSafe, it certainly has better return to work outcomes supported through this. So there is something in it for everyone. Now it's just a matter of communicating it out. Because we have a very disconnected workforce, remember? It's not like we can just call a staff meeting and say, hey, good news everyone, here's a new program. I think you'll like it. So, you know, we spent a lot of time on our communications. We each of us, so anyone who had a website, we put it on their website, right? We did a nice video that included members, myself, Ben, members, operators, mechanics, stockroom people. That video was played on all of our partner websites. We had a survey around awareness, around questions, all helping us to build our communications strategy and communications materials. We did surveys, we did poster boards, we did early morning meetings in the driver's lounges, late night meetings in the mechanics rooms. It was all about getting the word out, understanding if they one, are aware of the program, and two, any concerns they might have about the program, so that we can address them in the next round of communications. It was a long program. We started this, as you might have recalled, back in November of 2014 with the engagement with WorkSafe on the assessment. I'm proud to say we launched the program, a soft launch as we call it, in January of 2017, but we fully launched it to all of our employee groups in May, just 2.5 weeks ago. And based on the early results, I'm going to show you in a second, I think we're very proud of it. It's met with extreme support from all levels of the organization. But there are some lessons to be learned, for sure, and I'm happy to talk about it with anyone more. If we can do it, you can do it. Shift work cannot be deemed to be a barrier. We have operators that do split shifts, long shifts, compressed work weeks, weekend work, early morning work. If you think of some weird schedule, we probably employed it somewhere. It just takes some figuring out. Don't train your managers too early, because I can tell you, The first time's the first time, and you want your supervisors who are phoning their employee potentially for the first time in 6 months to deal with a potentially sensitive issue to know what to say, what not to say, and how to say it, what the program offers. If they stumble out of the gate, the whole program is set up for failure. Right along the lines of that is be flexible and patient. It took us almost 3 years. This is a major undertaking. It's about changing the way that you do business and the way that you consider injured employees. And along those lines, expect to have some resistance. Supervisors, they didn't have to deal with this before in certain areas. We had a disability management, as Ian referred to it. We had a disability management department. You got injured at work or off work, you called in, you booked off sick, and then we had someone that would help deal with your claim. This isn't about dealing with a claim anymore. This is about dealing with an employee. And so we really had to ensure that that was changing. Getting down to the last bullet, because I think it's the biggest one, and it's all about the culture change. When you think about injured employees from all the perspectives, it's really about changing the mindset, right? This is if you're injured, it's not about I need to go book off, I need to stay home and rest until I get better. It's not about waiting for the doctor to say that you're okay. There's certainly certain situations, but if you're talking about a strained back or a strained hip or a strained shoulder, there's lots of things that we can do to change that mindset and get them back in the office and recovering at work. As Ian mentioned, there was an online dashboard that was created. This is instrumental for us to ensure that we're following and we're making sure of how the program is running. It's got a combination of leading and lagging indicators. But I think, really, we want to know the results, right? Since launched, we've had 29 people reporting injuries. That includes both our occupational and non-occupational, so injured at work or injured away from work, playing soccer or fixing your car. 28 of them participated in the program, never would have happened before. 27 of them went to physio and had a functional assessment completed. 19 of those accepted accommodated duties within 3 days. As Benno mentioned, that to me blows my mind. In our collective agreement that you have 3 days before you even need a doctor's note to come back to work. Nobody came back to work within 3 days. Here you are back at work doing accommodated duties, and we have 22 workers back to work full-time now after 17 days. We were losing an average of 39 days for a musculoskeletal injury, and here we are doing it in half that time. I think the key point, though, is that if you were off for 39 days on average before seeing your teammates, before being back as part of the group, now you're doing it in 3. What does that do for a worker's perspective on their employer and how supportive they are about recovering and returning to work? Longer term, sure, it's early days. We got more work to do in terms of quantitative and qualitative measurements, but we have visions, right? We certainly want to pass the WDP assessment next time. Our plan is to do it in November. We want to ensure the employees who have gone through the program are liking it and look for any areas for improvements. And we certainly want to expand the scope to include mental illness. We do not have that at the moment. We wanted to walk before we ran, but we get a few miles under our belt, we will be able to expand this program. And like I said, there's potential to expand this across the province. So that's a huge opportunity. And one of my colleagues from just down the street is listening in, so maybe there's an opportunity to expand it in Victoria as well. And with that, Ben.
Well, being third up, hopefully all the technical glitches are worked out. So Unifor is the largest private sector union in Canada. There's 310,000 members, representing approximately 27 to 28 different sectors in the economy. In Victoria, I'm the president of Local 333BC, which represents BC transit workers, both operators as well as maintenance staff, as well as Handy Dart, Medivan, and Oak Transit. One of the biggest things when this came around, we realized that it was going to have to be a joint effort. We knew that. Have I got them both going?
You thought you had the technical glitches.
I thought I did. Thanks. So one of the biggest things that we had realized at the beginning was that this was going to need to be a joint effort for this to happen. This wasn't going to be something that we were going to be able to just sit there and, you know, BC Transit wasn't going to be able to do it on their own, and we certainly weren't going to be able to do it on our own. So, you know, almost 2 years ago, I mean, I think Brian had said it's probably closer to 3, it had started being discussed. We sat there and sat down together and we started looking at what's in it for the employees, for the members, and also what does the employer get out of it? Because we knew that both sides were going to get something, but it was actually something that was very different for each side. When we started to consider the program, it was clear that success would require the company and the union working together. This was a major hurdle at the beginning. We wanted to make sure that all employees were treated equally. We didn't want to see if somebody was out on the weekend and they sat there and were injured playing golf or, you know, playing baseball or hockey or whatever it was they were doing, and then they come back to, they should phone in for work the next day and they get treated completely different than someone that was injured at the workplace. We wanted to make sure, you know, you got the same great treatment whether or not, you know, injured in the workplace or you know, at home working in the garden, whatever it was. That was important to us. And, you know, at the beginning, people said, well, why do you need to have, you know, us taking care of the employee where we're providing benefits when they have it in the collective agreement? They can just use the benefits that were negotiated if they injure themselves at home and stuff like that. And we'd said, you know, it's really important for them to get the same treatment. They don't want to feel as though they're treated differently. So after some back and forth, you know, both sides came to an agreement, and I'm happy to say with the launch of this program, it is both, you know, occupational and non-occupational injuries are included in this program. So from the beginning, it was reported for all injuries. If you were injured at work or home, treated the same, supported the same. You know, the focus was aiding workers in recovering and staying on the job versus at home. This is a huge, huge change. I cannot emphasize how much of a change it is. Brian had referenced the 3 days, and that was a huge hurdle for the union. I'm going to say that, you know, I mean, WorkSafe had said it to me multiple different times, the 3 days, the 3 days. You know, early intervention, early treatment is going to make the difference. That's how much of a deal breaker almost this is. If we're not able to get the employee and get that treatment quickly, you know, it's going to hinder when they're coming back to work. So with the 3 days in our collective agreement, as Brian said, nobody's even calling, or nobody's calling the doc, nobody's going to a doctor. They don't have to do any doctor's note until day 4. So the first 3 days, they just call transit, I'm booking off, and if they're off still after 3 days, then they would need a doctor's note. So you wouldn't even be able to get them treatment or look at it. When this program launched, it was a real surprise to see those numbers where it's now went to, you know, the majority of the employees were back to work in 2.8 days. That's huge, because these are employees that would not have been there. That's because they've got the treatment. It's something they really wanted. You know, as I get to some of my other slides here, it's going to, you know, talk to, there's no out-of-the-box solution. When we started this, it was very interesting to see that there was nobody else doing this. There wasn't something that, you know, we couldn't just go and go, oh, you know, here's another corporation in BC, or here's another organization somewhere else that's doing this. There's even ones that I represent that thought they were doing this, but when you actually take a look at it, they were not. So going through and developing the program, looking for the different issues, looking for things that concerned us. Unifor and the other unions have all been directly involved right from the very beginning. There's been no phase that we've been left out of, so we've been able to give our feedback. We have a workers advocate that has worked very closely with this whole entire program, any concerns and issues. You know, the different people through BC Transit, they're actually working together on this. So if there's an employee that calls in and they're not too sure about this, our workers advocate that works for the union is able to sit there and contact them, and they're able to help out as well. So just to try and give the employees some encouragement. So this partnership has been critical, and I think I've said that a few times, and Brian has said it, but really I don't think that you'd be able to sell this to the employees without both sides working together. And again, this is all the working together phase. If you don't have you need the employer, the healthcare provider, employees, supervisor, and the union. If all of those, if any one of those groups is removed or skipped, it creates a major problem. You know, the healthcare providers. A lot of our employees aren't even aware of what a physiotherapist does. They've heard of physiotherapy, but they haven't been part of it. So we need that healthcare provider to also be able to understand that we've got different hours of work, the nature of our work. We need to be able to have them where, you know, we're able to have it on an evening or a weekend. Needs to be close to the workplace so the employee can leave and then come back to the workplace. Removing the waiting game. This is basically what happened in the past, and I'm sure it happens with the majority of companies out there. You wait for the injured worker to see a doctor and get a note. You wait for the worker to tell the employer they are not coming to work. You wait for WorkSafeBC to receive and make a decision on a claim and refer it to physiotherapy. You wait for a doctor to decide when a worker can return to work. You wait for an alternate duties to become available. Wait for WorkSafe to complete a return to work plan, and you wait for a doctor's clearance. That's a lot of waiting. That's going to be a long time before any of your employees are coming back to work if you're working through that. And any one of those phases can take a number of a very long period of time. WorkSafe, I think it can take in upwards of a couple of weeks before a claim is approved or not approved. So this is all a huge hindrance on employees' recovery, and definitely gets in the way of them getting back to work sooner. So change is the largest hurdle for sure for us to overcome. There is nobody that, I cannot emphasize enough how much of a change this is to the culture that we have, the practices that we have. In the past, you waited, you went to the doctor, you waited to recover, and then you returned to work. We know this now is not always the best, and that a number of other issues can arise from being out of work and not receiving early active treatment. Focus is now on remaining at work through an active recovery rather than focus on return to work after recovery. Early treatment. We want to get those employees treated and those members treated as soon as possible. This program actually gives them same day or next day treatment to physiotherapy. So even if they were using their existing benefits, very few of them were able to get into a physiotherapist that day or the next day. So they might call up and it might be 3 or 4 days before they even get into the physiotherapist. So this is a very important part of this program, because there's something that the employee may or may not be doing that is actually creating the, exacerbating their problem and making it that much worse, that the physiotherapist is able to give them, here you go, this is the kind of thing that you can do, or sit like this, or, ice it versus heat. So these are all important things that early intervention helps with. I spoke with regards to the physiotherapist. It was very shocking to see that a number of our employees said, you know what, I've never been to a physiotherapist, but I went there. That really helped. I didn't actually lose any time. I used no sick days, and I missed out on an hour and a half of work that the employer paid me for. And then I sat there and was back on the job, went to 2 physio treatments, and you know what? I was back to work and it was all good. The ripple effect is obviously, it impacts not only your recovery, there's a financial cost, there's the loss of experience and knowledge, and family issues due to sitting at home and maybe not, being unhappy with your health, unhappy with the pain. We believe that early, effective, active recovery needs to be the focus. Changing culture. This is, I could probably talk about this one for an hour. When we went out, I thought this was going to be a really hard sell to the members. And we had the workers advocate, all of the stewards, we had everyone from the union executive, all actively involved in explaining this program and what was happening with it and why it was important to the members and why we wanted to be involved in it. And when we sat there and went out there and started speaking to the members, surprisingly what we got back was, why didn't they do this before? Why wasn't this there before? Brian, I thought maybe was going to speak with regards to, there's one employee that, he said, when I'm off hurt, that affects my golf game. When I'm off hurt, another guy said, I don't get to play hockey. And I've got my vacation coming up. I don't want to be off. So if there's something you can do to get me back to work, I'm all in. So we've been very surprised with how open the members have actually been to this program. They're very supportive of it. When they're not using their sick time and they're able to get treatment that does not impact their benefits, a lot of them were not able to access their benefits. We know this because they were contacting us regularly saying, I don't have the funds. I don't have the access to go and book for physio. And some of them don't even know what physio is or what benefit it can actually provide to them. So these are all things that is changing a culture that, it's been surprising, and the members have been very open to it, but it was a long process to get here. This was not something that just, we maybe drew up some policies over a weekend, but we certainly didn't drop this program and just launch it in a week. It was months and months of it. It was on our website. The video that we developed was actually put out there for all of the employees to participate in and try and watch on the different websites. And there was an iPad that was in there. If they watched it, they just had to fill out a little survey as to what they thought. So we were able to get full support by the members to participate and look at it. So create a positive recovery at work relationship with the employer and the member, ensuring that they are supported in the need of active recovery. Continued improved workplace disabilities prevention program is key.
Nice job.
Play the video, or we want questions? Questions.
Very interesting presentation. And the synergy was quite amazing to listen to.
Thank you very much. I wanted to, first of all, congratulate you on a really good program. I thought that was, I'm an occupational therapist, and so I deal a lot with the WorkSafe and return to work and dealing with employers and unions and things like that. But things like that and that kind of a program from the genesis to the completion, it's kind of what I would want to kind of work in as far as a therapist is concerned. As far as access to physiotherapy when people are initially injured, was that a preferred provider you had that you would have kind of on call to be able to fit these people in so quickly, and was that something that was paid for by the union, by BC Transit?
Not even going to try the lapel mic. I think that's crazy. In terms of access to physio, I mean, we certainly engaged our healthcare providers early. We did a procurement process to find someone who was suitable with locations. We have 2 transit centers, one in one end of town and one in another town. And so we needed to have access, timely access. We needed to have a good location. We need to have pricing. We need to have hours availability. I think, to sum it up, we needed them to really understand us, as well as us to really understand them. We needed them to understand what it takes to drive a bus. We needed to know what it took to be a stockroom clerk, what it meant to be a mechanic. We brought them in, we toured them around the facilities. We had open houses. We got them to drive a bus for a while. And then after all that, we asked them for what are their proposals with regards to meeting our needs. As it stands right now, we continue to engage with our provider to modify hours availability and come up with some flexible accommodations, even if it means having one of the physiotherapists come to our location and set up a mobile treatment center in our first aid room to deal with something on a Sunday late night. So it certainly has to be a partnership. It's not a go to the market and just find something, because it's got to work for everyone.
Another question.
Yeah, great program.
You need to use the mic.
You can use this one if you want.
Here.
Oh.
Yeah, great program. Just the early intervention is really important. How much time did it take you to sell this in terms of initiating it? How much pushback and how much?
I can say that the time, a lot of time. There was a lot, before we even went out, we wanted to make sure we had it as close to, there's no such thing as 100%, but we wanted to be damn close to 100%. Right. And, we went over it through selling it through the video so that people were able to watch that, and just constantly being out there. At the different depots, we would have a union representative as well as a member from BC Transit that's part of developing this program would be down there. There was, posters, there was sessions at all the different depots, at all the different workplaces. So I can't tell you how many hours. I mean, it was at least the better part of, we've been selling this thing actively to the membership since November of last year, out there, putting it out there to them.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an important point in terms of, for all of us to realize that it takes a lot of time and effort to get this thing out, and I'm sure you got a lot of
not because of how educated we actually informed the workforce. I don't think we got as much pushback as what we were anticipating, because we didn't just try and, okay, let's launch this thing in May, and in April tell everybody about it, and then it happens. It happened enough, like there was enough information, enough education over that, almost a year.
You did a lot of groundwork.
A lot of groundwork.
Yeah.
And that's instrumental in making this program successful.
Great.
Maybe
And
just,
there's one more question
Yep.
in the back.
just as that.
Also, I had a question.
Okay.
First of all, I wanted just to say that, it's just awe-inspiring. It's really awesome. Not, particularly the fact that you're looking at both occupational and non-occupational injuries. And I think it's a real problem that we have in our current system, where we focus too much on causation without actually just getting appropriate treatment, because it doesn't really matter the cause. The important factor is the return to work, which you have emphasized. But my question was looking at non-physical, so looking at some of the mental health issues. And I was just wondering if you've begun to look at that at all, but also looking at some of the chronic disease components. I don't want to take away from the fact that I think that looking at the physical and the musculoskeletal problems and the program is just exceptional. But do you see some future development?
Good question.
I think we're going to fight over the mic on this
Yeah,
one.
we're going to fight over the mic. That's why I got that slide in my presentation. We knew this was a major change in culture. We knew this was a mindset change, and we wanted to be successful. We wanted, as Ben and I agree, right? The first few cases have to be 100% or as close to 100% as possible. And we knew that the MSI, back strains, shoulder strains, leg strains, those were the ones that we could hit out of the park if we all work together. We want to walk before we run, so we've been launched now for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. Let's see how it plays out. Let's ensure that we continue to prove it, and then let's start layering on some of the more complicated but equally important issues. Our number one time loss is MSI. Our number two is mental health. So we know it's there.
I'm going to say the mental health might be even higher up than that, just from the experience that the union has. And I think that the mental health program would absolutely fit very well within this return to work and stay on board program. So it's something that was discussed. It even came up the other day, but it's definitely something we need to learn how to walk before we run. But I fully would expect to see that being implemented into the program in the future.
One more question, Dave.
Fantastic initiative and well done on the results. I mean, it's 2 weeks since you launched, but I'm sure you must feel really proud as to where it is now. My question is about those longer term injured workers you mentioned earlier, the sort of 6 months, 12 months post. Given this program is more focused on initial injury, can you see any relevance or adaptation to those that are still off work and have been off work for quite some time?
Yeah, it's good question. Right now we have 28 workers who have been off for more than a year. As you can imagine, reintegrating and getting those individuals back into the workplace is exponentially challenging. What we have discovered is that we do have changing culture and attitude in the workplace for people who are unable to do their full job, their full role. So I think that is a positive that's coming out of this program that bodes well. We have better jobs, better modified duties for individuals who are not able to put in, say, a full shift before they need to go off and get a bit of treatment. So, I mean, I think we're changing the culture from the inside and making it a more accommodating and a more respectful workplace for individuals who are unable to do a full job. And that bodes well for those individuals who have been off for a long time to try to get them back in. But we all know the odds are against us. But we certainly aren't giving up on them. They're members of our team, just like anyone else. So we want to do what we can. We've created the culture. We'll continue to support that culture, and we'll continue to try. So I think for any individual or employers who are wondering, is it just about moving ahead? It isn't. You can do things to bring people back as well.
And probably the last question.
So my question is for Ben. So Ben, what's in it for Unifor? I mean, I get why BC Transit wants to do this. I get what's in it for the employees. What's in it for Unifor? What prevented you from saying no to all this?
Because we heard the issues that were out there with our members when it came to why they weren't able to go to treatment. The amount of times that our workers advocate would hear from people saying, you know what, I can't afford treatment. I've used them all up. I've got nothing else in it. you know, I've got a vacation coming up, I can't afford to be off. So then they're trying to go to work with an injury, they're not getting any treatment for that injury, and what ends up happening is they're off for even longer. So we knew there was a major problem out there, and we were in it obviously for the member. We knew the employer was going to benefit, but we wanted to help out the member. And, you know, contrary to what some people think and what we've really seen out there, employees don't want to be off. You know, Brian referred to watching Netflix for 2 days and then it gets a little old. Well, that's it. These people want to be at work. They want to be able to do something meaningful. They don't want to count paper clips, you know, but they want to be able to go to work and do something and be engaged. And they're more than likely, if they know there's an option there for them for treatment that's not costing them something, that they're able to get it quickly, we knew that would be something that, if you're able to change that culture and change the mindset of this is just the employer trying to get me back to work, that it's actually there to help you, that's what we wanted to get to, because it was very important for us. There's a small number of people that want to they want to book off work, they don't want to work. They're not interested in actually, you know, it's not about the injury, it's just, I want to stay off work. But that number is very small. And I think that this program has already even started to show that there's so many people that just get me treatment, get me back to work. I've got a life outside of work, and my injury is affecting my life outside of work. So that's probably the biggest thing for us that made us know that this is something that was positive. It's positive for the employees. Thanks. Yep.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We are looking